The screams started just after midnight, and Lydia Shepherd knew immediately that the men on the road were not ordinary thieves. She sat at her desk in the mountain schoolhouse, red pen hovering over a child's essay about kindness, when the first shout echoed up from the valley pass. Her hand stilled. The lantern flame guttered. Outside, snow had begun to fall again. The third storm this week, and the road down to Millbrook was already treacherous, even before whoever had set up camp at the checkpoint began stopping travelers. Lydia set down her pen and walked to the frost-glazed window, pressing her forehead against the cold glass. She was a heavy woman, soft in all the places the world told her she shouldn't be, and the schoolhouse chair creaked when she rose. She'd long since stopped apologizing for the space she took up. Her students loved her. That was enough. Below, in the distance, she could see torches. Too many torches for a simple robbery. She thought of him then, as she always did when fear crept in. Alaric Erebus, the pale nobleman who had appeared 3 months ago, claiming to audit the district's night roads on behalf of some obscure ministry. He moved like winter itself, all white hair and whiter skin, his eyes the color of old silver. He spoke little, but when he did, his voice carried the weight of centuries. And Lydia, foolish Lydia, had fallen in love with him the moment he'd stepped into her classroom to observe her teaching methods and asked, with genuine curiosity, why she taught her students that bravery was a skill rather than a birthright. "Because it is," she'd said, startled by the question. "Courage isn't something you have. It's something you practice until it becomes habit." He'd studied her then, really looked at her, not through her, or past her the way most men did. "A revolutionary philosophy," he'd said quietly. "Most believe heroes are born. Most are wrong." The corner of his mouth had lifted barely, but she'd caught it, and she'd been lost ever since. They'd spoken 4 times after that, brief conversations when he stopped by to check the road conditions or to warn her of reported disturbances. Each time she memorized everything, the way he never blinked when he listened, the old-fashioned formality of his speech, the way he looked at her like she mattered, like her size was irrelevant compared to the ideas in her head. The last time, 2 nights ago, he'd lingered by her doorway. Snow had been falling then, too. "You should not be alone out here," he'd said. "I'm not alone. I have 23 students who need me. They go home at night, and I lock my doors." He'd stepped closer then, close enough that she could see the inhuman pallor of his skin, the way his breath didn't fog in the cold. She wasn't stupid. She knew what he was. She'd grown up on the old stories, and the new ones too, the whispered rumors of vampire courts hidden beneath the city, of immortal kings who still held power in the shadows of the modern world. She didn't care. "Miss Shepherd," he'd said, and the way he said her name made her chest ache. "If you are ever in danger, call for me." "How?" "Call my name. I will hear you." And then he'd been gone, dissolving into the snow like he'd never been real at all. Now, staring down at the torches, Lydia's breath fogged the window. She heard the rumble of engines, trucks, more than one. This wasn't banditry. This was something organized. The knock on her door made her jump. She grabbed the fireplace poker before crossing the room. "Who is it?" "Mrs. Chen from the village." The voice was high, panicked. "Please, Miss Shepherd, we need help." Lydia unbolted the door. Mrs. Chen stood on the threshold, snow clinging to her coat, her face stricken. Behind her were 3 other villagers, and huddled between them were 5 children, the orphans from the Valley Group home. "They've blocked the road," Mrs. Chen gasped. "They're taking people, young people. We heard them talking. They're not robbing, they're—" She glanced at the children and lowered her voice. "Trafficking. We got away because old Mr. Liu caused a distraction, but they'll realize soon. These children need to get to the city, to the police station in Millbrook, before dawn. If they're still here when those men come looking—" "How long until dawn?" 4 hours. Maybe less. Lydia looked at the children. The oldest was maybe 10. The youngest couldn't be more than 6. They stared at her with huge frightened eyes. 4 hours, 5 miles of mountain road, and a gang of traffickers between here and safety. She made her decision in a heartbeat. "Get inside, all of you, quickly." She ushered them in, then turned to Mrs. Chen. "Go back to the village, quietly. If they come asking you haven't seen us, tell everyone to lock their doors and stay inside until daylight." "But how will you—" "I'll get them through, I promise." Mrs. Chen looked doubtful, but she nodded and fled into the night with the other adults. Lydia closed the door and turned to the children. They were shivering, terrified. She knelt down, ignoring the protest in her knees, and made herself smile. "Listen to me. she said firmly. "We're going to walk to Millbrook tonight. It's going to be scary, but I need you to be brave. Can you do that?" The oldest, a girl with fierce dark eyes, lifted her chin. "We can be brave." "Good. Courage is a choice. Remember that." She stood and began grabbing supplies. Extra coats from the lost and found, a thermos of hot cocoa, the emergency flashlight. Her phone showed no signal, as usual in the mountains. She looked at it for a long moment, then set it down. Instead, she walked to the door, opened it, and stepped out into the snow. The wind bit through her heavy cardigan immediately. She closed her eyes. "Alaric," she whispered into the dark. Then louder, "Alaric Erebus, I need you." The snow fell. The wind howled. Nothing happened. Stupid, she thought. Foolish to believe. "I am here." She spun. He stood 3 feet away, materializing from the shadows like he'd always been there. Snowflakes caught in his white hair but didn't melt. His silver eyes found hers, and for one dizzying moment she forgot how to breathe. "Lydia." He moved closer. "What has happened?" She told him quickly, the words tumbling out. The children. The traffickers. The 4-hour deadline. His expression didn't change, but something cold and terrible flickered behind his eyes. "You called me to escort you," he said. "I called you because I need help saving 5 children. The road is blocked. There are at least a dozen men armed with guns and knives. You are one unarmed schoolteacher." "I know. And yet you intend to go." "I have to. They have no one else." He studied her for a long silent moment. Then he stepped closer still, close enough that she could see the inhuman perfection of his features, the way his skin seemed to glow faintly in the darkness. "You are extraordinary," he said quietly. Her heart stuttered. "I'm terrified." "Yes? And still you choose courage." He inclined his head, a gesture so formal it belonged to another century. "I will escort you and the children past the traffickers. I will keep you safe until dawn." "Dawn is the deadline. We have to reach Millbrook before." "I know." His voice was soft now, almost gentle. "Dawn is also when I must find shelter from the sun. But there is time enough. Gather the children." She wanted to ask what would happen if there wasn't enough time. She wanted to ask what the sunlight would do to him, but the look in his eyes told her he already knew the risk and had chosen to take it anyway, for her. She went back inside. The children had clustered by the fireplace, whispering to each other. When they saw Alaric enter behind her, they went silent. He was tall, imposing, and so obviously other that even the youngest child knew instinctively he was not human. Lydia crouched down again. "This is Mr. Erebus. He's going to help us get to safety. I need you all to listen to him and do exactly as he says. Can you do that?" The fierce girl nodded slowly. "Is he a vampire?" Lydia heard Alaric go very still behind her. She looked back at him. His expression was carefully blank. "Yes," she said simply. "He is." "Will he drink our blood?" "No." "How do you know?" "Because I trust him. And I'm asking you to trust me." The girl considered this, then looked past Lydia to Alaric. "Do you promise not to hurt us?" Alaric moved forward and lowered himself to one knee, putting himself at the child's eye level. The gesture was so unexpected, so incongruous with his regal bearing, that Lydia's throat tightened. "I promise," he said. His voice had lost its formality. "What is your name?" "Jenna." "Jenna, I am Alaric, and I swear on my blood and title that I will see you and these children safe before dawn. Do you believe me?" Jenna stared into his silver eyes for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay." "Good." He stood, then looked at the others. "And the rest of you? Your names?" One by one they answered. Thomas, Maya, Dev, little Sophie, who could barely whisper hers. Alaric listened to each name, repeated it once as if committing it to memory, and nodded. Lydia's heart ached watching him, this creature of power and darkness, learning the names of frightened children like it was the most important task in the world. When they were ready, coats buttoned and flashlight in hand, Alaric opened the door. The snow had thickened, the wind had grown teeth. "Stay close," he said. "Do not stray from the path. If I tell you to run, you run. If I tell you to hide, you hide. Understood?" They nodded. He looked at Lydia. "Walk in the center. Keep them together. I will handle any threats." "Alaric, do not argue, Lydia. Not tonight." There was something in his tone, a quiet command that made her spine straighten. But beneath it, she heard something else. Worry. For her. "All right," she said softly. They set out into the storm. The path down from the schoolhouse was steep and treacherous even in good weather. In the snow, with 5 frightened children and 4 hours until dawn, it was a nightmare. Lydia kept them moving, one hand on Sophie's shoulder, the other gripping her flashlight. Alaric walked ahead, his white form barely visible against the snow. He moved without sound, without hesitation, and every few minutes he would stop and listen, his head tilted like a predator scenting prey. They'd gone maybe a mile when he raised his hand. Stop! Everyone froze. Lydia's pulse thundered in her ears. She couldn't hear anything over the wind. Alaric turned back to them, his eyes gleaming in the flashlight beam. 3 men ahead. Scouts. They have radios. Can we go around? Not without losing an hour. He looked at the sky, gauging something she couldn't see. We do not have an hour. Then what? Stay here. Do not move. Do not make a sound. He met her eyes. Do you understand? She understood. He was going to kill them. Be quick, she whispered. Something flickered across his face. Surprise, perhaps, that she didn't protest. Then he was gone, vanishing into the snow. Lydia gathered the children close. Jenna pressed against her side. Thomas gripped her hand. They waited in silence, the wind howling around them, and Lydia counted her own heartbeats. 15 seconds, 30, 45. A shout, cut off abruptly, a crash like a body hitting the ground. Then silence. Alaric reappeared, snow dusting his shoulders. His hands were clean, his face was impassive. It is done. Move quickly. They passed the bodies without looking. Lydia kept the children's faces turned away, but she saw. 3 men, throats torn, eyes staring at nothing. Dead in seconds, dispatched with the cold efficiency of a predator eliminating threats to its territory. To her, she should have been horrified. Instead, she felt only relief. They pressed on. The road narrowed, winding between steep slopes that made Lydia's legs burn. Sophie started crying quietly, exhausted. Without a word, Alaric scooped the girl up and settled her on his shoulders. Sophie clung to his white hair, her tears drying as she stared down at him in wonder. "You're really a vampire?" she whispered. "Yes. Do you have a castle?" "I have several. Do you drink blood?" "Yes." "Does it hurt people?" Alaric glanced back at Lydia, and she saw something almost vulnerable in his expression. "Sometimes," he said honestly. "When I was young, I was careless. I have learned to be better." Miss Shepherd says learning to be better is the bravest thing you can do. Miss Shepherd is very wise. Lydia's eyes stung. She looked away, pretending the cold made them water. They reached the checkpoint an hour later. Lydia could see the lights now, the trucks parked across the road. Voices drifted up, rough and careless. Someone was laughing. The sound made her skin crawl. Alaric set Sophie down gently and motioned everyone into the shadow of a large boulder. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper, but they all heard it clearly. "There are 9 men remaining. They are armed. Some have already taken captives, locked in the trucks. I will need to free them as well." "We can't leave them," Lydia said immediately. "I know." He looked at her, and there was something in his gaze that made her breath catch. "That is why He stopped, composed himself. "That is why I will free them. But it will take time, and time is what we do not have." Lydia checked her phone. 2 hours until dawn. Maybe less. "How long to free the captives and get everyone to Millbrook? If nothing goes wrong, we will arrive with minutes to spare. And if something goes wrong?" His silence was answer enough. If something went wrong, he wouldn't make it to shelter. The sun would rise and he would burn. "Don't do it," Lydia said. Her voice shook. "Get us through. That's enough. We can call the police from Millbrook. They'll come back for the others." "Lydia." He reached out and cupped her face with one pale hand. His skin was cool against her flushed cheek. "I am a king. I have been a king for 300 years. I do not abandon the helpless to predators. Not anymore. You'll die. Perhaps." His thumb brushed her cheekbone, achingly gentle. "But I will die having done something worthy of you." Tears spilled over. She couldn't stop them. "I don't want you to be worthy. I want you to live." His eyes widened. For a moment the ancient king disappeared, and he looked almost human, almost young. "Lydia, please." She gripped his wrist, holding his hand against her face. "Please, be careful." He stared at her. Then slowly, he leaned down and pressed his forehead to hers. The gesture was so tender it broke something open in her chest. "For you," he murmured. "I will be careful." Then he was gone. Lydia pulled the children closer and prayed. The attack was swift and brutal. She heard shouts, the crack of gunfire, the screech of metal tearing. Alaric moved through the camp like a storm, and every time she caught a glimpse of him, he was a blur of white and silver, inhumanly fast, inhumanly strong. Men fell, trucks overturned, and through it all she heard his voice, cold and commanding, ordering the captives out, telling them to run. It felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. When the last scream faded, Alaric appeared at the boulder, breathing hard. Blood stained his shirt, though she didn't think it was his. "Now," he said, "everyone, quickly." They ran. The captives from the trucks joined them, a dozen terrified people of all ages. Lydia counted them, herding them together, making sure no one fell behind. Alaric led them down the road at a pace just short of a sprint, and Lydia's lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she kept moving. Beside her, Jenna clutched Thomas's hand. Maya carried Sophie on her back. Everyone was helping everyone. The sky began to lighten. Lydia saw Alaric falter. Just for a second, just a hitch in his step, but she saw it. The horizon was turning gray. "How much farther?" she gasped. "A mile, maybe more." Too far. She knew it. He knew it. The first rays of sunlight broke over the eastern peaks. Alaric hissed, stumbling. Smoke rose from his exposed hand. He jerked it under his coat, pressing against the shadows, but there was nowhere to hide on the open road. "There!" Jenna shouted. She pointed. Ahead, through the thinning snow, Lydia could see buildings. The edge of Millbrook, and closer, much closer, a small stone chapel with a heavy wooden door. "The chapel," Lydia said. "Get inside, we can—" "No." Alaric's voice was strained. "Get the others to town. I will find shelter. Go." "I'm not leaving you." "Lydia, go ahead," she shouted at the others. "Run. Get to the police station. Tell them everything." She shoved the flashlight into Jenna's hands. "Go." Jenna hesitated, then nodded and took off running, the other children and captives following. Lydia turned back to Alaric. He was leaning against a tree, smoke rising from his neck where the sunlight touched him. His skin was blistering. "You stubborn woman," he rasped. "Go." "Shut up." She grabbed his arm and hauled him toward the chapel. He was heavy, solid, but adrenaline made her strong. They stumbled together across the frozen ground. The door was old, locked. Lydia grabbed a rock and smashed the handle until it broke. They fell inside just as the sun fully crested the horizon. Lydia slammed the door behind them. Darkness flooded the chapel, blessed and cool. She fumbled for a light switch, found one, and weak electric bulbs flickered on overhead. Alaric collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. His skin was raw where the sun had touched him, angry red burns that made Lydia's stomach turn. "Let me see." She knelt beside him, reaching for his hand. "It will heal." "Let me see anyway." He allowed it, and she carefully unwrapped his coat from around his burned hand. The flesh was charred, peeling. She bit back a sob. "I am fine," he said softly. "Lydia, look at me. I am fine." She looked. His eyes were silver and steady. He was smiling, just barely. "You should have run," he said. "You should have let the police handle the traffickers." "Touché," she laughed, a wet, shaky sound, and pressed her face into his shoulder. He went still, then slowly, carefully, brought his unburned hand up to cradle the back of her head. They stayed like that for a long moment, breathing together in the dim chapel. "Why did you come?" Lydia finally whispered. "When I called you, why did you come?" His hand tightened in her hair. "Because I have walked this world for 3 centuries, and in all that time I have never met anyone like you. Because you teach children that courage is a choice, and you prove it every day. Because when I am near you, I remember what it means to be more than a predator. To be good." She pulled back to look at him. His face was so pale, so beautiful, and so desperately sincere. "I love you," she said. The words came easily, inevitably. "I've loved you since the first night you walked into my classroom. And I don't care what you are. I don't care about any of it. I just want you to stay." His breath caught. For 3 centuries he had lived. For 3 centuries he had ruled. And in that moment he looked utterly undone. "Lydia," he said hoarsely, "I am a monster. You're a man who saved 5 children and a dozen strangers at the risk of his own life. You're a man who learned their names. You're a man who told a little girl the truth about his past mistakes because honesty mattered more than his pride." She cupped his face with both hands. "You're the best man I've ever known." He closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were bright with something that looked almost like tears, though she didn't know if vampires could cry. "I love you," he said, and the word sounded like a vow. I have loved you since you told me that courage is taught. I have loved you every moment since, and I will love you until the stars go dark. She kissed him. He made a sound low and desperate and kissed her back. His lips were cool, gentle, and then not gentle at all as she pressed closer. His burned hand came up to cup her jaw, and she didn't care that it must hurt him, didn't care about anything except the feel of him, solid and real and here. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers again. "The sun is up," he said quietly. "I cannot leave for hours, and you must go. The children will worry. The children are safe. They'll have reached the police by now." "Still, you should—" "Alaric!" She took his hand, the burned one, and held it gently. "I'm not going anywhere." He looked at her, really looked, like he was seeing her for the first time. The soft heaviness of her body, the fierce determination in her eyes, the way she held him like he was precious. "You truly do not care what I am," he said wonderingly. "I care that you're you. I am a king without a kingdom. I left my court decades ago. I have little to offer you beyond myself. That's all I want." He laughed, sudden and bright, and it was the most human sound she'd ever heard from him. "Then you shall have it, all of it, for as long as you will have me." "I want forever." The smile faded from his face. He looked at her very seriously. "Forever is a very long time, Lydia, longer than you can imagine. And you are human. You will age. You will— turn me." Silence. "What?" he whispered. "Turn me, make me like you." She spoke quickly, the idea crystallizing even as she said it. "I've thought about it. Not just now, I've been thinking about it for weeks. I could keep teaching. Not human children, but immortal ones. Your world must have children who need schools, who need someone to teach them that courage is a choice." She gripped his hands tighter. "I don't want 50 years with you. I want centuries. I want forever. So turn me." "Lydia!" His voice was strangled. "It is not a gift. It is a curse. You would lose the sun. You would have to drink blood. You would watch everyone you know grow old and die while you stay unchanging." "I know. I've weighed the cost, and I'm telling you it's worth it." She met his eyes. "You're worth it. You would do this? For me?" "I would do this for us, for the life we could have together, for the children I could teach in your realm." She smiled. "And yes, for you." He stared at her. Then, moving slowly, reverently, he pulled her into his lap and held her like she was something infinitely precious. "Are you certain?" he whispered against her hair. "I've never been more certain of anything. It will hurt. I can bear it. You will have to leave this world behind, your students, your life. I'll find new students, a new life, with you." He pulled back to look at her. His eyes were blazing now, silver fire. "Then I will turn you. Tonight, when the sun sets, and when you wake, we will go to my realm together. I will give you a school, a castle, anything you desire. I only desire you. You have me." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You have me, Lydia Shepherd. From this moment until the world ends. I swear it." She kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it. Relief, joy, love so vast it seemed impossible to contain. When the sun finally set, hours later, they left the chapel together. The village was quiet, still recovering from the night's chaos. Lydia stopped by the schoolhouse to leave a note for the district supervisor. "A family emergency," she wrote. She would not be returning. She looked around the little classroom one last time, at the desks she'd arranged so carefully, at the essays still waiting to be graded, at the chalk drawings on the board. "Regrets?" Alaric asked softly from the doorway. "No." She turned to him and smiled. "I'm just saying goodbye." They walked into the forest as full dark fell, deep into the mountains where the trees grew thick and the human world felt far away. There, in a clearing under the stars, Alaric turned to her. "Last chance," he said quietly. "I will not think less of you if you change your mind." "I'm not changing my mind." He nodded. Then, moving with infinite care, he tilted her head to the side and lowered his mouth to her throat. The bite was sharp, painful. She gasped, but then his venom entered her bloodstream and the pain transformed into something else, something bright and electric. She felt her human life draining away, felt her heart beat slow, felt her body change on some fundamental level. And then she felt nothing at all. She woke at dawn. The world was different, sharper, clearer. She could hear everything, the rustle of every leaf, the heartbeat of every creature in the forest. She could smell the richness of the earth, the crispness of the snow, and she could feel the sun, a prickling awareness of danger beyond the horizon. Alaric sat beside her watching. His hand rested on hers. "How do you feel?" he asked. She sat up. Her body moved differently now, stronger, faster. She looked down at her hands. They were paler, the skin luminous, still hers, but changed. "I feel alive," she said wonderingly. He smiled. "Welcome to eternity, my love." They traveled that day to his realm, a hidden city beneath the mountains where vampires lived in old-world splendor. It was everything Lydia had imagined and more: Gothic spires, gaslit streets, a castle that seemed to grow from the stone itself. Alaric took her to the Hall of Kings, where the vampire lords gathered. They stared at her with cold curiosity, this newly turned human who had captured their wandering king's heart. But Alaric stood beside her, his hand in hers, and introduced her as his consort, his equal. No one dared object. Within a week, he gave her the east wing of the castle and told her to make it a school. Within a month, she had her first students, immortal children who had lived decades or centuries, but had never been taught that courage was something you could learn. She taught them, and they thrived. Years passed, then decades. Lydia watched the human world change from a distance, always with Alaric beside her. They traveled together, ruled together, loved together, and one night, 50 years after her turning, they stood together in the schoolroom she'd built. Generations of immortal students had passed through these halls now, learning not just reading and arithmetic, but kindness, bravery, and the importance of choice. On the wall behind her desk she'd hung a photograph. 5 children standing in the snow outside a mountain schoolhouse. Jenna, Thomas, Maya, Dev, Sophie, all grown now, living human lives she could never return to. "Do you miss it?" Alaric asked, coming to stand behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist. "Sometimes," she admitted, "but I wouldn't trade this. Not for anything." "No regrets?" "Only that I didn't ask you to turn me sooner." She leaned back against him. "How many more students do you think we can teach?" "As many as need us." He kissed the top of her head. "We have time, after all." She laughed. "All the time in the world." Together, they turned from the photograph and walked out into the halls of their school, where the sound of children's laughter echoed endlessly through the stone. Immortal children who would live forever, who would remember forever that they had learned courage from a vampire king and a heavy schoolteacher who had refused to leave anyone behind. And on the eastern horizon, beyond shielded castle windows, the sun rose. For the first time in 50 years, Lydia watched it through protective glass, Alaric's hand warm in hers. She had lost the ability to walk in daylight, but she had gained everything else. "I love you," she murmured. "And I love you," he replied. "My queen, my teacher, my Lydia." They stood together as the sun climbed higher, 2 immortals watching the dawn, and Lydia knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. This was her forever. This was her home. And she had never been happier.